Hey everybody. Sorry if you hear my fan. I got it like running a little bit higher than usual because it is quite hot in my room. But welcome to episode 3 of my Thought Bubble series. Um, I guess I just wanted to like first talk about something, which was kind of the format of everything. When I had like this idea, I think I had a lot of theory of like what I wanted things to be like and kind of how I envisioned things going. And I'm sort of okay with it, but not really. And so, what I mean by that was, I think the grab bag idea was great, but I think there's some times where like I just want to yap about something like that day, and then if I just put it on a list and then kind of push it off till later, it's kind of makes it so that like sometimes when I come back to a topic, I'm not like as passionate about it, or like I don't want to get to a point where like I have everything on a list and then I end up like rolling it or whatever. I like pull it out of the bag and then I'm like, wow, I don't really want to talk about this. So there's some days I think where I'm just going to have it like today where there's something I really, really want to talk about and get off my chest. And then kind of on the days where maybe I'm not as kind of sure of what I want to talk about, or if I don't really have a topic in mind, then I can kind of have it as like a not necessarily like a backup, but like a brainstorming bag perchance. Kind of just having it as like a how do I put it, like just as an option of if I ever have a day where because I'm gonna try and make these like at least weekly, hopefully bi-weekly, which is kind of how I've done it the first week, but it's hard to say how much free time I'm gonna have, but at the very least I'll try to have them weekly. So yeah, I guess without further kind of talking about it, that's just kind of how things are gonna go. And I'm gonna try and just have ideas and days where if I like want to talk about something, I'm gonna talk about it, which is today. So the topic of what I wanted to kind of unpack in my brain today was it kind of stemmed from a lot of work things. I've been pretty uh like I don't know if down is the right word, but like anxious because I've dealt with anxiety pretty much my whole life. Mainly like once I hit middle school, it kind of started to get bad, where there were days where I just like couldn't go to school because I was just like super anxious and I just like stayed in my room the whole time. And as you like you grow older, you kind of find techniques and people to support you. But I've been feeling like really really anxious about my work and my life. And one of the things that I've been like kind of like anxious about is just like the social environment in my office. And what I mean by that is I feel like a lot of not necessarily like the older hires where I'm gonna say like, like everyone will be like unk, you know what I'm saying? But like people who are like maybe like early 30s, 40s, and like even those guys have like a kind of distinct group, and then it's like the newer hires, which is kind of my age, where we're all pretty young. We're like in our early 20s, early mid 20s, and it's like we don't we kind of like get along in the sense of like when we have like big company events, everybody's like doing stuff together and like eating together, and it's fine. But when it's like day-to-day stuff, like when we're eating lunch and stuff like that, like a lot of times like I know like from sitting from both of them that like the newer hires will say things about the older hires, and the older hires will say things with like the newer hires. And like I don't know, it just kind of like hit me of like why is there such like a big kind of gap in terms of I don't even know if it's just like not getting it, because sometimes I'm like the older hires just like need to change your perspective. And like of course like when you have like different generations, right, you're gonna value different things, but it's like they all seem to be kind of like the same personality type of people. And of course like you kind of share the common thing that we're all engineers. And so it was kind of like for me coming in, I was aware of it when I was coming in that these two groups kind of don't get along, and sometimes that's fine. But it's like so weird to me how people are like really really close friends when we're out and about and like we're planning things, but suddenly it's like in the day to day it's like we like are just like two separate, like it's like oil and water, you know what I mean? Like I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like it's something that's been kind of frustrating just because um not that I like feel like I have a problem with talking to either side, but it's like when I sit with one group and I hear like all the stories about like this person's not doing this, and or like this person said this, or like is acting crazy and like doing all this weird shit. I'm like, I don't know. It's just like it's so off-putting, and then you kind of like hear all these like complaints from one side, and then the next side, other side is like when they all come together and everybody's like hanging out, it's like everything's fine. And like you wouldn't even expect that like X person just didn't like hanging out with Y. And I don't know if it's just like, I don't want to say like being fake, but for me, I think I'm cool with keeping things like business. Like I like to keep things different and separate from what I do in the office and like my work life and all my people who are like my friends at work, and then like people who are my friends outside of it. And I don't know if that's like a good or bad thing, because I think it's good in the sense of like having a separation between the two where like you can go from friends to work is like great. But at the same time, it's also like sometimes you want your work people to be your friends as well. So I feel like it's like kind of like that's what's causing the most headaches for me. It's just that like I feel like I'm not really connected to anybody, because on one hand it's like, I think I relate the most to people my age in terms of like interests and like what they talk about. But then sometimes I just hear like this person is just being a pain, and then I'm like, I don't want to be in that group. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's partly that, but partly I think it's just frustrating to see that like for example, I think one of the things is that we're kind of closing some of the we're closing basically the separate eating areas, and so we're all going to sit basically in the same kind of lunch area, or we're going to quote unquote be forced to. And I'm hearing from people that like they'd rather sit at their desks and eat rather than like mingle with them, or like, yeah, it's gonna be really awkward like when we do this, and then it's just like, I it feels like I have to like take a side in a sense, and I don't want to do that, especially like, I mean, you all work for the same people, like we're supposed to be like not necessarily good friends, but like get along. You know what I'm saying? Like if we can't even eat like lunch together, then it's like, we're just gonna code switch and be fake during like company events. It just like doesn't kind of sit right with me in that sense. And I'm not saying like to just blow it up, like I'm gonna like crash out and just be like, I am not talking to this person. But at the same time, it's kind of just like I can only hide like what I feel for so long before it's just like, either I remove myself from the situation, or I don't know, like that person figures out what I'm thinking, which is, um, I don't know. It's just hard. And like, that's kind of part of it. But also, I think it's like more pronounced with some of like the older guys who are like the 40s, 50s crowd, and then kind of the younger hires. And I had a talk with my boss about it for a little bit of how to get people who are from different generations to kind of buy into the same thing. And I think that's really hard, especially for engineers. I think you spend so much time kind of like hitting the books and studying that sometimes you forget like you're not just dealing with like numbers and equations, like you're dealing with actual people. And so there's also like a emotional kind of aspect to things that like kind of matters, which is kind of why part of like why not just like the frustrations between like the younger hires and like the people who are a little bit older, and like that whole conflict that's going on, but it's also in the same token like just working with like some of the people in the office who are like managers and have been in the industry for like 10, 20 plus years. It's just like I feel like a lot of times the emotional side gets lost in, like, especially when you're like giving feedback to someone, right? No one wants to hear like you do X, Y, and Z bad, like don't make this mistake ever again. Like that's fine. But then like sometimes it's just like it gets to a point where you're just getting flamed all the time. And if you like only give criticism to people, they're just gonna like turn their brains off. I think. Especially for like my generation. I know like a lot of the older generation, I mean, they say like always like you guys, like you youngins are soft, and like you couldn't like go through it. But it's also like, things have improved, and they I'm very thankful for what they did going through like the harder times, because now it makes like my job easier, and we don't have to like work insane hours, or we don't have to like, just be super hypercritical all the time of everybody. And I think recently I've been kind of feeling that of just kind of like not a lot of like positives in the compliment sandwich. It like sometimes, like, if you want to critique someone, you can be like, hey, like, I liked what you did here, or like, this was like a good idea, but like, here's what is actually going on. Recently it's kind of just been a lot more just like, this is wrong, this is wrong. And I get a lot of like kind of passive aggressiveness, if that makes sense. Like, I get a lot more kind of, I don't know. I think it's like almost to the point where like I'm sometimes afraid to go over, because I feel like I'm just being annoying. And especially when you're trying to learn, or like working on projects where you have a lot of new work, it's kind of hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't just want to, you want to be have like an environment where people are free to discuss and free to give their opinions, and like don't feel like there's like a lot of pressure on it, or like be judged for it, because that's what internal things are for, right? Like, to keep it in house before it gets out to the public, because of course like that's gonna matter, realistically, right? It's like when you deliver things to people, or when you have like PR and stuff like that, like that's kind of the big thing. If like you mess up internally, right? Like, let's say like I'm working on a project and like I make a mistake, as long as it stays in house, like whoever it is down the line is gonna have no clue that I made that mistake. You know what I'm saying? But like, if you're afraid in that intermediate step to make those mistakes and be willing to go to whoever it is, like coworker, manager, et cetera, and like get that feedback, then it's kind of like you're more likely to end up down the line with a lot more mistakes, I think. So it's kind of like twofold of, it can affect your product later down the line. And so I'm trying to be still open about it. Like, I'm still trying to be open to the idea of, okay, if I go in and I get like feedback on, let's just say, whatever I did, and it turns out it was bad and I need to redo the whole thing, like, I'm trying to be more open to the idea of failing, which is a whole nother topic on its own, because I used to like not be like that, and I'm still learning kind of how to be more okay with not getting everything right the first time, and not having perfection on everything, and just being willing to make more mistakes and to fail, especially being so young and having that opportunity. But it is kind of hard, you know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times it's just kind of, you just kind of, what's it called, you kind of get beat down so many times, it's just like you stop getting back up type thing, which is kind of, wow, that was really depressing. But like, you kind of catch my drift, right? So that's kind of like one thing. And then, I don't know, it's just like, I just feel like in general communication could be a lot better. And like, it's a super useful skill to have for sure. And I think a lot of times when I get told like, oh, you need to be a better communicator, it's like from company to company, or like company to like your client or whoever you're working for, right? But it's also like just internally, because I feel like there's so many things that like could be fixed if we just like talk, and don't be like sitting there and be like, oh man, this guy just doesn't work hard or whatever. Like, you don't really know what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, he could be going through something like family issues or something like that, or like maybe it is turns out that he just is distracted, or like he just has like a short attention span, but something like that. But it's like, you can't just like judge it based on that. And if you are and aren't willing to put in the effort to communicate, then it's kind of just like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of conflicts arise, which is kind of where I feel like we're at right now, which is just like X party feels like Y party just doesn't get it, which is how I'm trying not to be, because I want to hope that like, not assume worst case scenario, and that like this guy is just always going to be passive aggressive, or like this guy's going to be like whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I want to still believe that like things can be mended. I don't know if mended's, because it's not broken. It's just like there's a lot of like awkward tension, and I think it's hard for especially me when I'm as anxious as I am on a daily basis to kind of come in and have like days where I just feel really anxious and like there's just like this nervous energy or stress in the air, you know? Cause I don't know. I just don't think I work I work okay under stress, but when I'm like sitting there and I like am tensing up and like I feel like my shoulder like just tensing or like I don't really grind my teeth, but I'm like I feel like the back of my jaw like I'm clenching it. When I have like physical reactions, that's how I know it's like pretty bad. Um we haven't gotten there yet, but I mean there's some days where I've just had like really bad migraines or like I feel like my brain is just like racing at like a million miles an hour. And so I don't know what like the conclusion of this is or like if there is like a takeaway this time. I don't know if I really wanted to have a takeaway in every video, but I'm going to try to. I guess like the big takeaway is it is hard, I think, to communicate between groups and generations, especially I think now where you have a lot of just like clicks and people are just comfortable with just sitting in their zone and then whatever happens in other groups happens and you kind of just like don't communicate between each other. But I hope that like I don't know, like if you are in a clique, just like be more open to other people's perspectives and don't just assume based on outward appearances of like who they are or what they act like or like based on people's kind of like descriptions of them of like if somebody told me like this person is like a liar all the time or like this person always flakes. uh it just could be like a one case thing, it could be whatever. So like being more open to giving people a chance and making coming to your own conclusions about them and being open to communicate with them, I think is one thing. And then I think the other thing is like I guess um partially like the small like part that I was talking about not being afraid to like make mistakes and like no matter what, I think the worst thing that you could do when like you have times like these where you feel like you want to you like say hey like do I guys want to do something on the weekend and then no one answers you, like to not get discouraged basically when things don't go your way and like to hold out hope always that like sometimes like things will just like roll your way or basically just like to not give up like when you get bad feedback at work or like if you have a rough day like be have the ability and like kind of like the fortitude to kind of like get back up and stay in the fight. But yeah, um anyway, that was my long rant about what was going on at work. Hopefully you guys enjoyed or like have better experiences at work. But uh yeah, I'm hoping kind of not necessarily like things will get better or stay the same, but kind of just like how do I put it? Actually, nah. Yeah, like kind of hoping things that like will get better over time or I'll just get used to it, but hopefully not cuz I feel like that's the worst thing you can do is just settling in a bad scenario. But let me know what you guys think. This is the longest episode to date, which has been great. Hence why I might be changing the format because I think it allows me to be more passionate about things I'm passionate about. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. If you also have rough experiences at work. But yeah, that'll be it. Thanks for watching.